Hello and welcome to the ADHD with Jenna Free podcast. Today we are talking about regulating through a big life event. So typically when I'm talking about the ADHD reset and regulation, people are thinking regulating through everyday life. Let's make the laundry easier. Let's make daily life easier. When things are going kind of normal, let's get out of fight or flight. But then someone will say, yeah, but what about, I've lost my job. What about someone has passed away? What about I'm going through a really hard time with my child? Something out of the ordinary, objectively hard, a difficult thing. How do we regulate through that? How do we do this work in that state? And that's what we're talking about today. So before we dive in, I do want to share, I have a new and improved free ADHD regulation guide talking about the 3 types of regulation. I do recommend you go download that. There's a video of me walking you through it, pretty short, like 9 minutes, or you can read the guide quickly. And it's going to give you some action steps. You can actually get started in this ADHD reset work. But let's dive into the episode. All right, the first thing we want to consider when going through a hard time in life, something big, and we want to get more regulated, we have to look at if we are, quote unquote, justifying our dysregulation. We really want to look at, is there parts of us that are holding on to being dysregulated in this situation because it feels warranted, it feels even helpful? Say, you've lost your job. That is devastating. And I'm not saying you're not going to grieve and you're not going to have huge, big feelings and it's not going to be hard. But if you want to work through regulation in this hard time, we want to see, is my brain kind of going like, well, I can't relax. I've lost my job. I get it. But if we are in fight or flight, is that going to help you get a new job? Is that going to help you problem solve and fix the issue, which is being jobless, and that might just be, I need to apply for unemployment for a bit, or I need to, get to that job hunt sooner than later. I need to work on my resume. When we're in fight or flight, blood flow is leaving the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for prioritization, planning, logical thinking. So is that the state we want to be in when we're solving a problem, like not having a job? No. So it's not going to help us. But if our brain is thinking, well, I need to be frantic, I need to be intense, I have to be anxious, because if I'm not anxious, I'm not going to find a new job. That's not true. You are going to probably take longer to get yourself back up there and getting into a new job if you are in dysregulation. So that's the first point. Am I holding on to my dysregulation because it's feeling helpful in this big, hard time? The second point we want to consider when in a hard time is, am I seeing being regulated as like not being a good person? Or am I bringing morality into my regulation and dysregulation? And here's what I mean by that. Sometimes when we're dysregulated about something, we're actually dysregulated about it because we feel we should be dysregulated about it. I will feel guilty if I feel calm in this time. Maybe your mom, was diagnosed with something. Maybe your mom has cancer, and that's so upsetting. And you're going to grieve and you're going to feel horrible about it, of course. But perhaps you're, okay, it's been discovered. We're in treatment. I'm helping her out. We're making things happen. Okay, things are moving along. But we have 1 second of calm and we feel guilty for it. Well, I should be upset all the time. I should be anxious and dysregulated and in fight or flight constantly because I'm a shitty child. I'm a crappy daughter if I am not worried and anxious about my mom 24/7. That can really come up. Or even the job loss example. If I lose my job and my partner's stressed because I've lost my job and I have a 30 minutes of happiness one evening with my kids, I'm shitty and I'm not worried enough, and I need to be more worried to show that I really care about this job loss. We want to see, wow, where am I holding on to dysregulation and unable or unwilling to work on this and kind of grapple with it and get more regulated because I feel guilty when I feel happy for a second or calm or present. And that can actually come up a lot more than you think, even not in big stuff, right? Even in, wow, I have lots of work to do at work. It's a busy time at work. And I feel guilty if I'm enjoying my evenings. So I'm going to ruminate about work and feel bad about it. A lot of this is more subconscious. You're probably not actively thinking that running across your brain every night, but we want to observe, is that a barrier in my regulation right now? The third element of consideration when we're thinking about getting regulated during a hard time is remembering you're a human being. You're going through a hard time. It's going to be hard. If you're sad, you're going to feel sadness. If this is challenging, you're going to be challenged. If you're grieving, we have to grieve. Sometimes I think we use regulation as a way to bypass discomfort. Let me try to regulate my way out of this grief. Not going to work. It's not what it's there for. It's there to take a layer off the top because maybe someone has passed away and you are in such survival mode, which makes sense, but maybe you get stuck there for 2 years, right? Sometimes that can happen. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, I'm still grieving, right? I totally understand. Grief is not a linear line. It's up and down, and it probably never ends in many instances. But am I also in survival mode on top of that? And then we get out of survival mode. Okay, well, even when I'm present and regulated, I'm still going to have grief. I'm still going to feel sad. You might even still be stressed about things, right? But regulation is not going to take the humanness out of your hard times, unfortunately. But that's something we want to look at, because when we are avoiding any hardship or pain at all costs through scrolling, spending, substance use, if we're using external things to try to make ourselves feel better, this is somewhat related to last week's episode on dopamine and that hedonia versus eudaimonia. And hedonia, which is that part of us that's like instant gratification, avoidance of any pain whatsoever, versus eudaimonia, which is searching for meaning and contentment and true happiness, which will involve some pain along the way, because that means we're facing life and really living. So you're human. If you're going through a hard time, it's going to be hard, just like it is for everybody else. Regulation isn't going to make all those feelings go away. So the fourth point here is understanding what regulation's role is during a hard time. So say you have lost your job. I feel like this is a good, little bit less sad example. It can be devastating though to your family, I know. But when you lose a job, where is regulation coming in? Again, it's not going to make all the hard feelings go away. It's not going to make the hard challenge of finding a new job go away. It's not going to make the grief go away. It's not going to make the fear go away even. We can help with that a little bit actually with regulation, but we're still going to have the human experience. So what is it doing? What is its role? The role for regulation during a really hard time is observing where is my system, my thoughts, and my behavior tipping over into survival mode, and where can I take that kind of hard extra layer of being survival mode off of the top of this experience. So if you've lost your job, that comes with a lot of tough reality. But what is the dysregulation on top? That might be, wow, I'm staying up till 3 a.m., very chaotic and searching for jobs, but it's not really working because then the next morning I can't even get up and I still want to get the kids to school, even though I don't have to go to work, but now I'm sleeping in and, it's creating a lot of chaos. Our behavior is quite dysregulated. That's what we want to look at. Yes, you still might be putting a lot of hours into the job hunt, but maybe it makes more sense to be putting, 9 to 5 into the job hunt, not in the middle of the night when we're just doing it because we're feeling anxious, not doing it because it's logical and thoughtful and we're clear-headed about it. We want to get out of that survival mode, even when, here's the thing, a little bit of nuance here. Well, you can get out of survival mode and still be working hard towards a goal and still understand that hey, we got to get things moving because, we only have a 1-month cushion if we're, if you're privileged enough to have any cushion at all. I think the argument here, and kind of even what's coming up in my own mind at the moment, is someone's going to say, yeah, but that is survival mode. But here's what survival mode really is. Survival mode is I am in imminent, meaning immediate, meaning in front of me, life-threatening danger, and I need to fight, flee, freeze, or fawn my way out of this immediate situation to survive. Is that true when you lose a job? No, because you can't fight your way out of your boss letting you go, for example. You can't fight your way into a new job. That's not going to work. You can't flee your way, to make it better. Avoiding it's not going to make it better, so it's not actually helpful. Freeze isn't going to keep you from having the effects of losing your job, right? It's probably just going to make it worse. Fawn, are you going to people please your way into a new job? Probably not. That's typically not how it works. You're not going to people please your way from not getting let go. So we want to look at what is the role of survival mode? Because I think people think too broadly or too generally about that term. I totally get, yes, you're not in your most solid, really feel good time of life when you've lost a job. But also, being in survival mode is not going to help you get a new one. Survival mode is not going to help you apply for unemployment and get some money so that you can keep afloat, right? So we want to really work on that awareness. What is that role of regulation? And this is kind of circling back into point one, which was, am I justifying this survival mode, this time of being in survival mode? And so that example would be a yes. But I've lost my job. I am in survival mode. No, you can be in survival mode. It doesn't mean it's helping you. Of course, you might be in survival mode. You might be in survival mode when your life is perfectly fine and everything's peachy keen. It's not really about the situation. But what I'm saying is survival mode / being in fight or flight is only ever going to help you and be of use to you when you are in imminent life-threatening danger. Think bear chasing me in the woods. Think, someone's robbing my home and I need to fight my way out, right? That's imminent and life-threatening. I need to survive here. So yeah, fighting will keep you alive and be helpful. Fleeing will keep you alive and be helpful. Maybe freezing and hiding, right? They don't see you. Well, and I'm hoping this isn't triggering for anyone. This is obviously a very horrible thing to be talking about, but these things can happen. And people pleasing, right? Appeasing your aggressor. That's what fawn is. People pleasing, appeasing your aggressor. That could get me out of this situation. Unless those are the solutions to your problem, we want to get regulated. We want to regulate our nervous system, our thoughts and beliefs, and our behavior to get back to a regulated state so that beautiful brain of yours, the prefrontal cortex, part of your brain responsible for prioritization, planning, and logical thinking, can get that blood flow back so you can solve your way out of this problem. Most modern day jobs, most modern day issues are more thinking, planning, prioritizing. I need logic and thought. I need to be calm and clear-headed here to solve the problem. We don't really live in a time, of course it can happen, but it's typically not our day-to-day where I need to fight to solve my problems or flee to solve my problems or freeze to solve my problems. So I really want you to think on that, because that is an important distinction of what survival mode and fight or flight are for and helpful for. And again, you are going to become dysregulated and be in survival mode during situations where it's not helpful. But that's the whole point, is that's why we regulate. That's why we do this work and become aware of this, so we can get out of it as much as we can. It's never going to be perfect, but that's what we want to work towards. And number 5, our last main consideration when we're going through something out of the ordinary, something very challenging in life, and regulation. We want to think, is part of my dysregulation fighting with reality? So reality is what it is, right? And so if you're in a hard time, that's probably something that you would prefer not to be reality. So maybe the reality is you've lost your job. I'm just going to use that throughout this whole episode. The reality is you've lost your job. Part of our dysregulation and our stress can come from fighting that reality. What does it look like to fight that reality? I shouldn't have lost my job. It wasn't fair that I lost my job. I can't believe I lost my job and they kept Susie on and I do a way better job than her, and I can't believe I was let go, and why didn't they choose her, and I can't believe that I've lost my job, and how am I going to get a new job? It's the shoulds and the judgment and that fighting with the reality, instead of going, okay, the reality is I've lost my job. That freaking sucks, right? Again, you're going to have the human feelings and emotions and tribulations that come with it. But if we don't fight that reality, we can then go, okay, now what? The reality is I've lost my job. Now what? Right? That kind of keeps you more cool, calm, and collected, and allows you to move forward and kind of move your brain towards solutions and next steps, instead of spending our time in the past of it shouldn't have been this and it should have been that and why did they do this. I'm not saying you're not going to think those things, but you want to observe if you kind of fall down that rabbit hole and then go, oh, I see what's happening here. I'm fighting with the reality that I've lost my job. And, I've kind of done that. Time to move on to solutions. Okay. The reality is I don't have a job and I would like income so I could keep us afloat. All right. What now? What do I do now? That's the difference between a dysregulated brain and a regulated brain. A dysregulated brain is quite powerless, right? It doesn't think, okay, there's a problem. I'm accepting that problem. Let's move along and solve it. It's like, oh my God, there's a problem here. There shouldn't be a problem here. Why is there a problem here? And we argue with ourselves about why this problem is here for 2 hours instead of getting way ahead of it and starting to solve the problem. So when you become more regulated, you can really see how we are aligned with reality. We're more accepting of reality and we move on from there. Some of the objections of that and some of the things coming up for people right now might be like, isn't that depressing? You got to fight. You can't just accept it. But it is what it is. You can think that you shouldn't have been fired all the live long day, or let go, whatever it was. But unless there's action you can take to say, hey, this was wrong. This was an illegitimate, letting go, and I'm going to fight it. That's different. It's still acceptance. Okay, I accept. The reality is I'm currently fired. What now? Well, you know what? I don't think that was legal. I'm going to fight it. That's fine. I'm not saying accept everything laying down and be a doormat and just whatever happens to you, too bad, so sad. But if you sit in the fighting with reality, it's, well, I shouldn't have been. Well, it was unfair. Well, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but it still happened. Maybe the solution is you got to fight that because that was wrong. And you think, hey, I think I'm going to win that. That wasn't right what they did, for this reason or that reason. I can see that was illegal. Great. That might be your next step, but it's still acceptance has to come first. Because if you're still sitting there fighting with the reality that you were let go, you're never going to have your feet on the ground moving forward with the solution. So in the coming months, you might have a hard time, whether it be something small, whether it be something devastating, whether it be a huge thing that happened in your life that's bringing up so much grief. You can kind of just check in with these things when you're ready. This is not the thing to think about immediately, when there's been a catastrophe, right? Of course, you're just going to be in your feelings and you got to feel those feelings. You got to process it, and be with your family or whatever it is. But then at some point, you might think, okay, I'm feeling so horrible. I think there's some regulation to do here. What's blocking that right now? And then you can kind of come back to these points of, am I stuck in the morality of, I should really be feeling bad about this? Am I justifying and thinking, hey, being in fight or flight is going to help me here? Because that's probably not true. And the other points we talked about. Those are things you can think of when you're having a hard time and you're feeling stuck. Again, one of those points was you are a human that's going to go through hard stuff and it's going to be hard. You also want to observe that. Am I using regulation as an avoidance tactic to not feel these feelings? Because maybe the solution is just to be in it for a little bit. And that's okay too. You can actually regulate in that though. I'm kind of going back on my own point. But you can regulate even in that way of knowing it's safe to feel sad, right? It's safe to be upset. It's safe to feel grief. It's safe to cry my eyes out, because I think a lot of times we don't want to feel those feelings. Yes, because they're painful is the word we use, but sometimes they are physically painful, right? But a lot of times it's just the judgment of oh, this shouldn't be happening. But if we can regulate that top layer, oh my God, I shouldn't be crying like this. It's so scary. I can't be feeling this bad. It's okay to feel bad sometimes. You're safe. There's no bear. You're not in imminent life-threatening danger when you're grieving. But again, I know it's so nuanced. Sometimes it feels like you are because it's so big and so debilitating. But I hope this conversation is helpful. If something big is going on in your life, if you do feel like, hey, I've gotten out of the ordinary situation and I don't know what to do, these are the things we can consider. So thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope that was helpful for you. A few more insights, a little more nuance with regulation. This work is quite complex, so I know sometimes it helps to talk about some different aspects of it. Please share this podcast. If someone's having a hard time and they have ADHD, even if it's something little, right? It doesn't have to be a devastating thing in your life. It might just be something out of the ordinary. Maybe you got a promotion, it's a good thing, but now you have a bigger workload and you're feeling like, oh, that's out of the ordinary and I'm very dysregulated about it. You could actually use these same points as well. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It just has to be, whoa, this is a big thing out of the ordinary that's causing more dysregulation than my typical day to day. What's going on? How do I cope with this? I really think this approach is so important for every ADHDer to be at least aware of. So thank you so much, and we will see you next week.